Good morning, friends. Our session will begin in 2 minutes. We wish to inform everyone that this session will be recorded. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. My name is Kevin Chua, Senior Economist at the World Bank and Treasurer and Trustee of the Philippines Economic Society. I will be your moderator for this plenary session of the 59th PES Annual Meeting and Conference. Thank you very much for joining us for today. This morning, our session will delve on harnessing digitalization for economic and financial literacy. How have institutions, sectors, and industries harnessed digital innovations to promote economic and financial literacy? What challenges were encountered and what gaps are still needed to be addressed? We will be joined by 4 panelists from the public and private sectors to shed light on these matters. To open this session, may I call on the President of the Philippine Economic Society, Dr. Faith Cacnio, for short opening remarks. Dr. Faith.
Thank you, Kevin. Our distinguished panelists, AG Edna Villa, Mr. Suu Wei, Mr. Januszczak, Ms. Salve Duplito, PES officers and Board of Trustees, our PES members, colleagues, friends, good morning to all of you. Under Republic Act number 10922, or the Economic and Financial Literacy Act, the Philippine Economic Society is tasked to plan, initiate, and encourage knowledge-sharing activities on economic and financial literacy for the private sector and civil society. Thus, the PS undertakes various activities, outreach learning programs, trainings, and learning interventions to promote economic and financial learning in the country. We also partner with other institutions like the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas and academic institutions for these undertakings. The PES annual meeting and conference coincides with the observance of the Economic and Financial Literacy Week. This EFL session is the PES way of celebrating the EFL Week. Our EFL session today focuses on digitalization and how we can leverage it to further promote economic and financial learning in the country. Digital platforms can provide wider reach and engage more stakeholders in economic and financial learning programs. The PES can attest to this as we have conducted our EFL activities, including this conference, online since the pandemic last year. On this note, may I say that I look forward to our discussion this morning. Thank you.
Thank you very much, President Faith, for those opening remarks. Before we formally begin, let me run through a few reminders and house rules. First, we will be having an open forum towards the end of this webinar. For those joining us in Zoom, you may send your questions through the Q&A box. For those joining us through Facebook Live, you may send your questions through the comments section. Second, kindly use the chat box and comment section sparingly to avoid disturbing the speakers and your fellow participants. Do not spam the chat box and comment section with messages that are unnecessary and irrelevant to our topic. Third, the session will be recorded and all recordings will be available through the official Facebook page of the PES. And finally, towards the end of this session, the link to the session evaluation form will be open. Only those who will accomplish the evaluation form for this session will be given an e-certificate for this session, whether you attended through Zoom or through Facebook Live. Let me also take this opportunity to acknowledge and thank our conference partners, our platinum sponsors, the De La Salle University School of Economics, the National Economic and Development Authority, and the Philippine Competition Commission. Our gold sponsors, the Aboitiz Power Corporation, the DOST, Philippine Council for Agriculture, Aquatic, and Natural Resources Research and Development, and the Frederick Newman Foundation for Freedom Philippines. And finally, our silver sponsors, the Ateneo Center for Economic Research and Development, the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, and the Union Bank of the Philippines. Now, without further ado, let me introduce our panelists. Dr. Edna C. Villa is Assistant Governor of the Payments and Currency Development Subsector, PCDSS, of the BSP. This subsector is in charge of the exercise of oversight, regulation, and supervision over payment systems and participants thereof, the formulation of development strategies and policies for currency and payment systems, including digital payment transformation initiatives and policies to ensure currency integrity. The subsector also conducts the anti-counterfeiting operations of the BSP. Immediately preceding her assumption as PCDSS head, Dr. Villa was the head of the BSP International Monetary Affairs and Surveillance subsector, which covers external debt management, the update and implementation of foreign exchange regulations, as well as international relations of the central bank. Dr. Villa also held the position of alternate executive director of the International Monetary Fund Executive Board, representing the Southeast Asia Voting Group. Dr. Villa holds a PhD in economics from the George Washington University, Washington, D.C., and an MBA from the University of the Philippines. She graduated with a BS Statistics degree, cum laude, from the University of the Philippines. May I give the floor to Dr. Edna Villa for her opening statements.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Kevin. And good morning, fellow panelists, esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you to the PES for this invitation for the BSP to share insights on how we have harnessed digitalization to promote economic and financial literacy. Economic and financial literacy have been part of the mainstream work of the BSP, particularly since the early 2000s. Central to this is our firm belief that an informed citizenry is a more effective partner in achieving our core mandate of price and financial stability. Now, with the amendment of our charter in 2017 and the passage of the National Payments Act in 2018, our work in fostering a safe and reliable payment system was formalized as an additional mandate of the BSP. To put flesh into the formalization of the payments mandate, the BSP last year created a fourth sector headed by a deputy governor. This is the Payments and Currency Management sector. Now, to shepherd this work, not only in keeping safe and reliable the traditional payment systems such as the RTGS or the PhilPass, but also in pursuing retail payments into the digital frontier. Okay, one of the proven techniques in education and literacy is learning by doing. As you may know, learning by doing was first espoused by American philosopher John Dewey, who advocated that when students are allowed to interact with their environment, they can adapt and learn. Now, following from that, it stands to reason that one can more effectively teach interest rates, compounding, or the present value of money if your students or your audience has have a savings account, has or have borrowed some money, or has or have made a payment for a financial transaction. Financial concepts that are quite esoteric become more easily understood in the context of an actual product that one has touched, felt, experienced. Now, this is what financial inclusion offers. When one has access to financial products, all these concepts come alive. The BSP has been pushing financial inclusion for years now. This work is supported by policies to democratize access to finance, outreaches for financial education, and regulations to ramp up financial consumer protection. So now, with that background, let me quickly respond to the question that Kevin posed earlier. What has the BSP done to harness digitalization to promote economic and financial literacy? Let me cite two broad ways: indirectly and directly. First, and quite simply, we have utilized digitalization as a strategy to bring about greater financial inclusion. And by the reasoning of learning by doing, we have also raised financial literacy as well. Payment is the most basic and most used financial service by Filipinos. So it makes sense to use digitalization of payments as a strategy to reinforce our financial inclusion agenda. As an example, the pandemic has caused exponential onboarding of Filipinos into the formal financial system through electronic money wallets like GCash and PayMaya. These e-wallets have made it easy for many of you to add to cart during lockdowns. For those who have become entrepreneurs during the pandemic, these digital payment platforms help to facilitate payments. Now, if we didn't have digital or contactless payments options during this pandemic, the economy would have stood still. For some in the audience who have become accidental entrepreneurs, you have had to learn accounting and inventory principles to keep your profit margins. That, for the most part, is learning by doing, enabled digitally. This is an indirect way of raising financial literacy, but perhaps it is a more palpable and practical way. Second, PSP also has formal financial literacy programs that are set using digital or social media platforms. For example, our BSP Facebook account is filled with economic information delivered in a tone and cadence that cater to the digital social native. The governor takes to Twitter and has a weekly media outreach called GBED or GBED for Governor Benjamin E. Diokno. He has the GBED Talks, where he explains at a higher level our monetary and banking policy agenda. GBED Talks is available by WebEx and through our Facebook account. Our research work and agenda are digitally available in the BSP website. We have a chatbot called BOB or Bob, or the BSP Online Buddy, which can be accessed for lodging financial consumer complaints. So we cover a whole range of audiences with our digital efforts: students, academicians, business, other government agencies, the general public. Under our digital literacy program, we have the hashtag Safe at Home with e-payments campaign. One practical application of this campaign is the promotion of the use of electronic fund transfers to avoid unnecessary trips to bank branches. Concepts as simple as those. Digitalization has all these benefits, but it also has its dark side. So we have partnered our digital learning program with a cybersecurity awareness campaign. In here, we espouse digital hygiene, and we seek to remind the public that e-safety is everyone's responsibility. PSP Governor Diokno has set a goal of 50% of financial transactions in digital form and 70% of Filipinos onboarded with one transaction account by 2023. It is our hope that with these strategic goals, PSP would also have been able to raise the depth and the reach of financial literacy in the country. Once you have skin in the game, you will really learn. So let me stop here now, but I hope later in the panel I could have a chance to share with you some of the challenges we have encountered on our road to digitalizing payments and how we have tried to address these. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Villa. It's really nice to hear about the initiatives BSP is pursuing to improve economic and financial literacy of Filipinos. Let me now introduce our second panelist. Mr. Januszczak is a president and CEO of UBX. UBX was initiated to positively impact financial inclusion and business growth through technology. Founded in 2018 by Union Bank of the Philippines, UBX operates in Singapore and the Philippines, recognized as the fastest growing fintech company in Southeast Asia 2020 by UK-based Global Brands magazine, and Best Digital Community Impact Initiative in Southeast Asia 2020 by Capital Finance International. Under Mr. Januszczak's leadership, UBX has defined the standard for digital payments, platforms, and access to credit. Originally from Canada, Mr. Januszczak's degree in astrophysics and experience in telecom, commercial software, banking, and insurance industries provides a unique and well-rounded perspective on digital platforms. Prior to UBX, he served as a Chief Operating Officer of Manulife Philippines. May I call on Mr. Januszczak for his opening statements.
Thank you, Dr. Chua, for the kind introduction. I'm really excited to be here today, talk about what we're doing at UBX and in the financial technology industry in general to harness digitalization to promote economic and financial literacy. For those who may not be aware, UBX is the financial technology venture studio and venture fund that we spun out of Union Bank in 2018. For UBX, our vision is simple. It's opportunity access for all. Our tagline is include everyone. So for UBX, it's all about including the exit, bringing more people into the financial system drives the economy and financial literacy, but more importantly, it improves lives. According to the Philippine Institute for Development Studies, financial inclusion hinges on access, usage, quality, and welfare. Our key thesis at UBX is that access, usage, quality, and welfare is best enabled by embedding financial services into the activities and the experiences that truly matter to individuals and businesses. Not just learning by doing, but learning by doing what you're already doing. More and more, the activities that matter to individuals and businesses being facilitated by digital platforms. And so we're building digital platform for digitally and financially underserved communities, while at the same time aggregating, virtualizing financial services to embed into the platform of others. On top of this, pandemic has greatly affected individuals, businesses, and communities. Going digital is becoming a necessity in order to survive and thrive under a new normal. Opportunity and access to needed technology and digitally enabled services become apparent. Now more than ever, we need to include everyone. So just some examples of the technology we've created to drive economic and financial literacy. We have SAP, our digital end-to-end lending experience for both lenders to make their access to credit digital, but also for MSMEs. MSMEs, pre-pandemic, we're driving over 60% of the GDP, employed over 60% of the population, and yet under 10% of loan from universal and commercial banks were going to this critical segment. And we've made it easier for lenders and for lenders to be connected to micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises. It's a digital experience. You can go directly to our online marketplace, but even more so embedded CCAP in platforms that micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises use every day, such as Lazada. So if you are on Lazada, even the smallest merchant on Lazada, within the Lazada merchant experience, you can apply for working capital. The approval is, if not rendered instantaneously, is provided within the day. To date, we've processed well over 5 billion pesos worth of loans for this critical segment. Our payments platform is powering over 100,000 businesses, and it grew exponentially over the pandemic. And what's about our payments platform? It enables from the most basic casual seller right to the largest customer. So whether you're selling through Shopify or selling over, we create a simple, easy digital payment experience. And lastly, Sentral, officially 1 million SMEs in the Philippines, but by our estimates, there is double, perhaps triple as many unregistered businesses, casual sellers, people who have, in particular under the pandemic, stepped up with community-based kitchens and that sort of thing. We noted there was a big gap from selling through Viber and Facebook to selling on a more sophisticated e-commerce platform or selling in the popular marketplaces like Shopify and Lazada. And so we created Sentral literally because the payments and the financial services and the logistics are integrated out of the box. You can literally be up online, selling on in literally minutes. So for us, financial literacy is the confident understanding of concepts like saving, investing in debt. And it's not access to financial products like having a basic transaction account, but usage. For example, using that account to make transfers, manage money rather than merely withdrawing funds once a month. So providing access to transaction data and enabling value payments like our Bucks platform and Sentral, our e-com platform. UBX is fostering innovation that targets the underbanked, offering legitimate alternatives to inefficient and ineffective financial practices, target consumers and businesses today. And if I can be practices that do not drive real financial literacy. So for UBX, at the end of the day, there's just one question that I'm really excited to answer. What happens when you connect all 110 million Filipinos, 110 million financially literate Filipinos to a global economy without any barrier to access?
Thank you very much, John Jay. It's very encouraging to see the contributions of the private sector to bring financial inclusion to 110 million Filipinos. That's a lot of numbers. Okay, for the next one, I would like to introduce our panelist who's currently in Singapore, Mr. Suu Wei. Mr. Suu Wei is the Asia Pacific Director for Public Policy and Economic Graph for LinkedIn and is focused on forging partnerships with governments and other organizations across Asia Pacific to bring LinkedIn's unique insight to life and create economic opportunities for members in the workforce. He engages with national and local governments, industry associations, academia, and other stakeholders to shape the policy environment and help LinkedIn grow its business in Asia Pacific. Mr. Ho serves as an independent director of MSI Global Private Limited, a wholly owned subsidiary and commercial arm of the Singapore Land Transport Authority that provides land transport planning and management solutions. He also co-chairs the Government and Regional Affairs Committee at the American Chamber of Commerce in Singapore to drive thought leadership and contribute to impactful programming for the Chamber. Mr. Ho holds a bachelor degree in mechanical engineering from the University of Tokyo in Japan and an MBA degree from the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania in the US, with a double major in finance and management. The floor is yours, Mr. Suu Wei, for your opening statements.
Thanks for the kind introduction, Dr. Chua. Good morning, fellow panelists and participants to the session today. I'm very delighted to have the opportunity to participate in this panel discussion. As Dr. Chua introduced, I'm based in Singapore and used to travel quite a bit to Manila for work, and I'm certainly looking forward to be able to do so again very soon. Today, I would like to share my perspective around how LinkedIn harnesses digitalization to promote economic literacy. And in fact, LinkedIn's vision is to create economic opportunities for every member of the global workforce. And it is our true north for everything we do. So let me start off with an overview of LinkedIn. LinkedIn, as some of you may know, is the world's largest professional network. Globally, we have 800 million members across 200 countries. In Asia, we have more than 219 million members. In the Philippines alone, right, we have 9 million members out of around 41.3 million employed Filipinos. So it's a very substantial penetration that we have in the Philippines. Just to give you some more statistics, right, 45 million people use LinkedIn to search for jobs every week. 77 jobs applications are submitted by LinkedIn globally every second. 4 people are hired every minute on LinkedIn. And 130 new members sign up to join LinkedIn every minute globally. So just to give you some perspective, from the beginning of this session until we are done, which is about 1.5 hours later, LinkedIn will have another 11,700 new members sign up with us if we just do a calculation based on this rate. Every day, people come to LinkedIn to learn the 17,000 courses we have across business, creative, and technical categories. And we respond to the learning needs of our members by adding around, I would say, 60 new courses every week. Our members also use LinkedIn to connect with their peers and contacts. And just last year alone, right, because of COVID, there were actually around 4.6 billion new connections made on the platform. So for me, right, I'm responsible for LinkedIn economic graph in Asia Pacific. And this economic graph is a digital representation of the global economy with all the data on LinkedIn, including companies and jobs available and the skills required to get those jobs. And this allows us to really have a holistic overview of the career journeys and talent trends of the global workforce. And from our perspective, this very impressive sort of membership on our platform gives us a very amazingly rich set of data, which is global, which is granular, which is real-time and historical. And in particular, right, our data is super granular. We break down in various categories from schools to industry and so on and so forth. They actually allow us to go deep into each category for further insights and analysis. And I also want to emphasize that the real-time factor is very critical as well. Members' data are by no means stagnant. They go through job changes, they go through skill developments, educational achievements, and so on and so forth. So our members in general are inclined to update their profiles on LinkedIn in order to achieve their objectives of networking, job searching, and so on. So therefore, our data tend to be very real-time in this regard. And we are also able to chart the changes and developments of our members over time. We have a good sense in terms of the trends like talent migration, hiring rates, and the kind of in-demand skills and so on. So just coming back to the question in terms of how we harness digitalization to achieve our vision of creating economic opportunities for every member of the global workforce. In a way, I would say that we leverage on our platform to connect members, provide jobs and learning opportunities, and members share their data with us, and we use algorithms and data science, right, to basically transform these data into labor market insights, which we then share with policymakers to help inform and shape policies, as well as to support our members in their professional journeys. Let me spend a bit of time talking about the impact of COVID on the future of work, and maybe that would be a good segue to our discussion later, right? Globally, we're seeing around 250 million jobs being displaced during the pandemic. In Asia Pacific, we saw an estimated 80 million jobs being displaced. Some industries such as recreation and travel had to make widespread layoffs. Many remain out of work today. But on the other hand, right, we're also seeing a positive impact on some industries. Companies that could transform and adapt their businesses to the digital world will see growth. For example, we saw an e-commerce boom as consumers who were on lockdown turned to digital channels for their daily needs. Logistic companies as well, right? Some of them expanded quickly and often struggle right now to find talent with the kind of skill sets for open kind of roles. And on top of this, jobs and skills, right, required for them have changed so much over the years and so on. So the only way to stay abreast with these changes in the work landscape is to start placing an emphasis on skills. We feel that organizations who hire skills will have access to a wider talent pool and will be able to find the right talents to fill their roles. And during COVID, we're also seeing a phenomenon of what we call the great reshuffle across the world in terms of more people moving jobs compared to pre-COVID. As the economic risks subside, we can probably expect job movements to become more adventurous. So I'm happy to talk a little bit more about some of these labor market insights specifically for the Philippines in the discussion later. So thanks again.
Thank you very much, Suu Wei. Very, very insightful. I think it's really good that one of the big vision of LinkedIn is to create economic opportunities for everyone in the workforce. If I may go to our next speaker now, and this is our fourth and last panelist, we have Ms. Salve Duplito. Ms. Salve Duplito is the founder and the president of Empower and Transform, a young company composed of a dynamic team that has expertise and experience in using COVID-induced massive movement of activities, from education and entertainment to work and business, for the advancement of financial education for Filipinos here and overseas. Ms. Duplito is also the resident financial advisor of On the Money, a personal finance show aired on the ABS-CBN news channel, where she has a regular segment called Salve Says. She is also the managing producer and head writer of the said show. Salve shares personal finance tips and strategies and widens the discussion on financial consumer and investing issues that face viewers today. As a financial literacy advocate, Salve has pushed for more than 2 decades for a cultural revolution on how people should handle their finances and use debt wisely. Before joining the media, Salve worked as a communications consultant and writer for organizations like the World Bank, the USAID, and the Asian Development Bank. She also worked for 2 decades as a financial journalist for publications like the Philippine Daily Inquirer, the Inquirer Interactive, and the Business World, winning prestigious awards for her articles like the Jaime V. Ongpin Awards for Investigative Journalism, EJAP, Metro Pacific Banking and Finance Reporter of the Year, and the Citibank Award for Excellence, among others. May I call on Ms. Salve for her opening statements.
Thank you, Kevin. You know, I need to edit that intro. It makes me very dated. Maybe we can just say the only Zoomer in the group. Maybe that's a better introduction. Thank you so much. June is laughing. We have 65 people in Zoom and 1,000 more on Facebook Live. Half of those probably are John Jay's fans, right? And we're very happy. I just want everybody to know that you are in great company because the people who spoke before me, I learned a lot. I already tweeted some of the things that I learned about. I want everybody to know what the Philippine Economic Society is doing and what the PIDS is doing to help financial literacy, because we all thought it was just all about the big words, GNP, GDP. But you know, when I was a young reporter, and this is what I want to say for the first 5 minutes, when I was a young reporter, most people I talked to didn't know what GNP or GDP was. And that made me feel so bad about my job because that was all that I was writing about. The first time I learned about GNP, GDP, I was calling June Neri on the phone. Can you please explain to me what this number means, right? And so I thought, how can that be connected to the needs of everybody on the ground? And my answer for that was financial education. No one will be able to make the right economic choices if they don't know what inflation or education or GNP means. So I made that my life's work since Business World days to Inquirer to ABS-CBN News Channel to talk about financial education from the rooftops, if I may say. And in the beginning of the crisis, I'm speaking very fast, guys, because I only have 5 minutes. In the beginning of the crisis in March of 2020, I was asked by the UNDP and the Pasig City government to help their people who were receiving supplemental assistance. And Mayor Vico Soto was saying, okay, 15,000, 5,000, or 10,000 may be gone in a day, but if we first teach them financial literacy, maybe that amount of money can be stretched a little bit. So guys, if you can just imagine, at the height of the pandemic, nobody knew as much about COVID as we know now. So there was definitely a lot of fear there. I went to Pasig City. I had maybe up to 7 classes per day, 20 minutes each for 20 people each time. At the end of the day, I was like lantang gulay. And at certain times of I think there were around 9 days that I did this for UNDP and the Pasig City government. At some point, we were already doing the classes under the trees, right? They selected some sort of a community setting where I was just under the trees and everybody was fanned out in front of me, seated away from me so that we can do social distancing and all that. And during that time, I had to teach so many lolos, titos, and titas who were so scared that the money in their e-wallet will disappear in 1 second if they click on the wrong button. So you can imagine it was all about teaching people the value of emergency money at the time of COVID when you can lose your jobs, to teaching people that your phone is a handheld computer. It is not going to blow up if you make the wrong command or something like that. And they were really so scared of the e-wallet. But it was very interesting. That experience to me taught me a lot of things about the need for financial education in our country and how it must be delivered. and in what language, in what voice, what platform should be used. And then after that, we went to the kamuning market vendors. I was teaching everybody in who sold chicken and pork and vegetables in the wet market about what the real effective interest rate of 5-6 loans were. And when I showed them, okay, a financial advisor will compute that this way, and that's more than 330% in a year, they were looking at me and I felt like I was going to be murdered right on the spot. So I've been doing financial education for 25 years. That's like my entire working career. I just told you my age, right? But it's obvious that as the rate of the growth of financial education in the country has not yet overtaken the rate of the population. Diba? So as long as there are a lot of babies being born, we need to do much more, because none of the things that we're going to talk about the economy will mean anything to them. So what we did in Pasig, as I was telling you about, it was a face-to-face interaction, but that was only 20 minutes. And definitely we needed a landing page so that everybody who needed more information and were willing to learn more so that they can move from poverty to the investor stage, they have a place to go to so that they can get more financial education. We cannot teach people in 20 seconds or in 20 minutes. Financial education has to be a continuous journey. And that is what COVID has taught us. Digitalization, harnessing YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and would you believe it? I'm streaming on Kumu. I'm actually a very shy person, if you can believe it. So, if I follow and I watch everybody who I like to follow, I won't eat, I won't sleep, I won't work, because everybody has content now. There is a lot of traffic in the metaverse, not just in the real EDSAverse, right? Just Lord, just to get to the office, it takes me maybe more than 30 minutes now. And that's crazy. So the question now is not just to use digital platforms, but to harness its real powers, because there's a lot of noise, including the ones from the scammers. So our people are fighting a lot of financial issues now. There's bill shock after COVID. You probably have seen just how much money people are shelling out to get treatment. Buti na lang if they have PhilHealth, right? They can get that treatment for free. But I know a lot of people have gone into millions of debt, even though they've had emergency funds in the past. So there's that, there's losing your job. And now more than ever, no one can afford to be scammed, because we need our funds in the right place. We need to put more legitimate financial literacy content out there to crowd out the content of the scammers and the fraudsters. Metaverse is here to stay. And we just have to be populated with the right information. We need to teach people how to pay their consumer debts. I know it. 11/11. I was just gonna ask you guys, what was your budol fine? Yesterday there was piso seat sale, But if we're paying all of that with consumer debts, that's unsustainable, not good for the economy, right? There's a lot of things that we need to teach. We need to teach people about how to set up their emergency funds. And would you believe it? They asked me, can I put it in an alcansya or in the bank? And if in the bank, what kind of bank? Those are very basic questions. And we don't teach that in elementary or high school. We need to teach people how to buy the right medical and life insurance. We need to teach them how to invest intelligently. So we need a landing page for all of these experience, and Facebook, IG, Twitter, let me just say, all of those platforms is going to help us become part of the movement on financial education. My experience, I was one of those who set up INQ7.net. Sorry, that ages me again. I think that was more than, 20 years ago. So back when blogging was not yet the in thing, there were no vlogs yet. I think it's just starting out. Twitter, it was all very new at the time. These are a few of the things that I know works. People don't go to social media to learn. You need to remember that. Can you type that? Okay, I don't know who is watching here, but can I see if you're still listening or if you still have energy? Can I see in the chat box if you are still here with me? People don't go to social media to learn. So all content, if you want your content to be read, it must be entertaining, it must be personal. Your viewer should have an emotional connection to you. That's why, when people post their dogs, there's a lot of engagement about it. And your language, I'm sorry, it cannot be economics language. It has to be very simple, very easy. Dadagdagan ni Jun niya ng hugot line para marami share ng kanyang post, di ba? Jun is on Twitter, very amazing. And then it's really not about the followers. Justine, John Jay, and we were talking about this backstage prior to the event. There are a lot of people who have more than 1 million followers, but what kind of transformation is happening if those followers do not really have that connection with who you are? It's just about the makeup or some other things. So there's a lot of space, is what I'm saying. There's a lot of space in the metaverse for people or organizations who want to be in the space on financial education, but we need to do it better so that we can transform and empower more people. I will stop talking now, Dr. Kevin, and give you back the spotlight.
No, thank you very much,
kayo.
Salve. Your liveliness is very, very infectious. And I really like the way you tell the stories, the things that you did in the past to improve on financial and economic literacy among the community. I think it's very worthwhile to talk about the fears that our elderlies have of losing money by using all these digital platforms. So these are something that we can discuss later. Thank you very much, Salve. So ladies and gentlemen, we have rounded up the opening statements from our 4 panelists. I think we can now begin the discussions with some questions to our speakers. So let me begin. I want to address my first question to Assistant Governor Villa. You've mentioned, Dr. Villa, in your opening statement, some of the initiatives being pursued by the BSP, such as onboarding of electronic payments, e-payments campaigns, and also the use of GBET and social media, Twitter, chatbots to reach out to Filipinos. What are the challenges that you've encountered in promoting economic and financial literacies, given all these initiatives that you have already pursued?
Okay, let me just thank you for that question, Kevin, and let me just seg to what Salve said towards the end of her talk. The BSP, as formal as it is actually reinventing itself in terms of how it is reaching out. So as I mentioned, we do have Facebook. Everything that we do is now on our Facebook Live page. All of our SOCMED cards are written in a way that's, I'm hoping, catchy enough. We have it all translated in different dialects across the Philippines. So we have financial literacy centers across the Philippines. We have over 20 economic financial literacy. These are brick and mortar financial literacy centers that are able to explode or expand the social media content that we have digitally. So, so we're trying to move to the 21st century in terms of this one. But prior to this, we already had a very close engagement pre-pandemic with the Department of Education. We actually have a curriculum with elementary school students that talks about savings, all of the things that are very important, as basic as those for elementary students. You have to start them young. When they're older, it is probably more difficult for you to be able to change your habits. So you have to start them young. And when they're already into, as Salve said, they're not interested to learn, they just want to be seen, right? So you need to be able to make the content similar to that. In relation to this, I wanted to just address something that John Jay said earlier. He said something like, it's not a matter of access, but it's usage. I mean, I agree with that. But the BSP, our role is to create an environment where you have the tools to be able to access. And after that, we are hoping that the private sector will come in and actually engage the target market, given the regulatory environment that's available to you already. Part of the regulatory environment that we have is we have rules for our supervised entities. we make them part of a regulation is a consumer consumer awareness mechanism, that we don't tolerate any entry into their account should be treated with zero tolerance. So therefore, every entry should have at least double verification. So these are some of the things that we do to bring us to the 21st century, to make sure that as we digitalize, we are also sure, or we are also able to address the scammers that are out there. Because as Salve said, you have to crowd them out. So, and that is not a role for the BSP alone. It's whole of government, it's whole of country approach. We can't do it by ourselves. So I hope that addressed your question, Kevin.
Thank you very much, Assistant Villa. That was very good, very insightful. That addresses the questions. In
I
fact,
super love Pesolit, Doc. Kevin, Pesolit and Bob, they're really, really good. They make,
Don't you love it? Yeah.
yeah, and
Pesolit.
and the language is very different. It says, "Uy, Bes." Uy,
Bes.
Bes.
Diba?
Yung 11-11, kumusta? And stuff like that. That's very, very effective. And I sometimes interview BSP officers in my YouTube channel, and Mel Plabasan, for instance, when we were talking about NFTs and cryptocurrencies, John's face suddenly lighted up. And then the language of, I call him Paring Mel because we sometimes have a show together. The language is like, uy, hindi ko sinabi na walang basagan trip dito. That
Bawal
quote,
basagan ng trip.
bawal basagan ng trip. That quote really caught on. And I think that's one of the innovations, really the language, our emotional connection, even with the regulators. It's very exciting. It's a very exciting space to be in right now.
Yes.
May I just say,
Sure.
that is really the goal of Governor Chok. No? He says he wants to bring BSP closer to the Filipino, and therefore we have to be like more like more of the regular people without losing the essence of what a central banker is.
Yeah, and
So
I
no
think
TikTok.
if I may jump in, I agree with the deputy governor very strongly. The private sector, whether it's LinkedIn or UBX, the market pull that we create complements the regulatory push, by the central bank and by the regulators. It's really because of, for example, working with the BSP, that we were able to create a blockchain-based payment network that connected community-based financial service providers, rural banks, thrift banks, to the larger NRP. So when we work together, there is a very, very nice complementarity.
If I may even also jump in here, talking about the BSP's attempt to be closer to the people. I'm just checking on my LinkedIn account, and I see that BSP is on LinkedIn. There are around 33,000 followers. We think that a lot more can be done, and I'm more than happy to offer my support to anyone in PSP to see how we can sort of ramp up, BSP presence in LinkedIn. And I think it's very important because almost all the financial institutions, almost all the professional stakeholders are on LinkedIn, and they would be more than happy to follow BSP's announcements. They'll be more than happy to follow the governor if there's an interest in terms of being a bit more active to share some of the thinking, some of the policies, and so on and so forth. So happy to see how we can make it happen.
I think that's a good opportunity, Dr. Villa, now that Mr. Suu Wei is offering his help to BSP.
I know you already, okay?
No, there's something pretty interesting that I'm trying to collect from Dr. Villa and Salve's reaction a while ago. Salve said she'd been helping elderlies to understand, how to work out the digital payments, and they have this fear. And then Dr. Villa mentioned one of her recommendations was to start with when people are young. So I'm wondering, Mr. John J., have you seen this kind of information? On let's say in terms of gender, age, income levels, and location. Can you describe this profile of digital finance users in the Philippines? And what do you think are the challenges to promoting financial literacy and usage among Filipinos?
Let me lay this up a little bit. I think with the pandemic, there has been a massive and sudden change in consumer behaviors. And I think the drilling into demographics is I think that's two years ago, to be quite honest with you. It doesn't matter, actually. People need, and I think we've talked about this a lot already. People need to get online and leverage digital sheer necessity. For UBX, our entire value proposition is predicated that we leverage digital to reach the underserved, unbanked population. And to us, it's just, well, this is the economic society. So for us, it's plain economics. Physical distribution is limited and rich. It's relatively expensive, but at the same time, most of the population has access. Salve is talking about, hitting the wrong button on the phone. Most of the population has access to these devices, and so we see huge opportunity, as obviously does everybody on the call or on the talk today, to provide access by serving up financial services digitally, and of course, making a positive and material impact on financial literacy along the way. However, I will say this: key challenges in technology and service adoption are definitely challenges in technical and financial literacy. So one of the things that we've done as part of our leveraging digital to bring financial services to the underbanked or the unbanked or the under financially served is we have worked very, very consciously on creating meaningful and accessible on-ramps to digital financial services. So for example, we leverage on existing community-based financial service providers. These could be community-based banks, but they could also be independent banking agents. We're really leveraging on changes, existing regulation, but also changes in legislation. And our UBX Eye-to-Eye Kosa Barangay app allows independent banking agents to take their mobile phone into the community, help people digital onboard, offline to online, bring them online to do an assisted funds transfer, a payment, issue insurance, even do loan applications digitally. So as Salve was talking about, our agents using the Bangko sa Barangay app can easily be in the market working with the pajeros and actually connecting to reputable lenders and offering credit at reasonable rates versus what shared earlier. In our payments platform, we've actually aggregated the largest number of over-the-counter cash solutions as a payment option behind this digital platform. So for the merchants, you've digitized their experience completely. But for consumers who are learning to use digital, they can still pay cash over the counter. So we've digitized the journey of the last mile and allowed them to make the final payment in a way that's still familiar, but gets them on this kind of digital, or this journey of using digital for financial services. We've embedded our lending platform into the services, for example, even LGUs. So if you are in Pasig and you're availing TAPET program for assistance for your business, it's actually UBX's CCAP that's powering the digital lending experience underneath that. So just make it even about story, because I also like what they said, GDP, all of these things. These are just statistics that aggregate stories about real actual people. So with our talk about community-based financial service providers, and we think about rural banks, maybe we pawn shops, but even small businesses. We have travel agencies that use our mobile ATM in the community that allow people to access funds and make payments. On our Bucks platform, we have a young edu printer education entrepreneur. I'm trying to create new English words here, but an edupreneur. And he, yeah, and you know, this guy is wildly successful. I can tell you that he has thousands of transactions a month, and he is selling bite-sized education courses to people as they upskill over for the pandemic. The courses that cost maybe 100, 200 pesos. Go ahead. Yeah.
I was just gonna say, okay, I'm excited for all of the products that UBX has. But just to add to that, and part of our advocacy or part of our mandate is to have all of these different products offered by all of these different platforms in an interoperable environment, so that one does not have to be limited to a particular service provider, but rather whether I'm in the service provider or in UBX, for example, or another, or my account is in another one, they are interoperable. And this is what we wanted to do with the National Retail Payment System. And what undergirds the NRPS is the principle of interoperability. And that levels the playing field in many, many different aspects, so that I am not bound, for me to be able to pay an account, for example, in this Bank A, I have to have an account in Bank A. So we have a lot of digital payment streams that are being onboarded. We started, of course, with InstaPay and PesoNet, and riding on PesoNet is the eGovPay, where you can pay government fees or licenses or whatever you need to pay to the government through eGovPay that rides on the PesoNet rail. And then we have QRPH, which rides on InstaPay. We have QRPH for merchants. We now have QRPH P2M. The initial use case for QRPH was person to person. So now we have launched it fully in October, where you have merchants. And we're hoping that this will catch on, because in our analysis of financial transactions, more than 70% are actually payments to merchants. If you include payments by businesses to businesses, which are supplier payments, the aggregate will be over 90%. So with that information, we are pushing payment streams like debit pay, bills pay, direct debit, I should say, bills pay, request to pay. You know, these are things that will expedite payments to merchants in a safe, interoperable manner. So, as I said in my opening remarks, you know, when they actually have the product on hand, they have skin in the game, so to speak, they will, by sheer, logic, need to learn. They need to learn how these products work, and therefore you can expand financial literacy. But we need to also, include things like, how do you protect yourself? Because there are, as we digitalize, there are scammers there. So, that's what I just wanted to add to what John Jay mentioned.
No, thank you. Thank you to the governor for saying that. I've been a light touch on this, but one of the reasons we spun ourselves out of Union Bank, well, first and foremost, we're actually not a financial service provider. We're a technology company, aggregate and virtualize financial service provider. And I agree with everything that you just said. 150%. One of the reasons that we spun ourselves out, besides being a technology provider, is we are open by design. So we do not discriminate against any reputable leader or financial service provider. In fact, our IT platform creates interoperability between over 103 regulated financial institutions, and in turn connects that to the NRPS. So yeah, what you said, you just said resonates very, very clearly. And I was in a talk with the governor about open finance.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, and in the UK, as an example, the Europeans might, for honest, be a little bit further ahead than us on open finance. In the UK, they have a thing called the Competition and Market Authority, CMA 9. And so the way that they opened it up is they told the top 9 banks, you must create an API to these standards and open yourselves up. And the reason that worked is because top 9 banks in the UK represented about 8% of the population. The Philippines is so different. The top 9 universal banks do not bank 99% or provide financial services or even reach, and I don't know, maybe like 20% of the population. It's a very small, big enough, but not big enough. So I agree with Deputy Governor. Connecting and creating interoperability between all of the hundreds of regulated financial institutions and thousands of non-banking financial institutions, and then on top of the payment channels and the lenders, and do it in a way where the customer and customer could be a consumer or the merchant, where they own their data. And they're the ones with their consent allow companies like UBX to bundle and join all of these providers together to take on a financial journey that makes sense for them, that's hyper personalized for their needs. Critically important.
Customer centric.
Yeah, I thought the NRPS, the first time I heard about it, was the work of a genius. Because can you believe, Suu Wei and John J., can you believe, if I were to pay Dr. Edna, and we have different bank accounts, right? I have to withdraw from my bank in Union Bank. Just kidding. I have to withdraw from that bank and walk or drive all the way to another bank just to pay her because she doesn't have a Union Bank account. So when the first time I heard it, I thought, this is something that we should have had 50 years ago.
Revolutionary, right?
Yeah, but it only meant bankers working together, right? But finally it happened. My question is to everybody, and I think they're opening now to the Q&A session. And this is for Suu Wei. Sorry, Dr. Kevin, okay lang ba? I asked
questions. Okay. Please go ahead.
I'm a reporter, so
He's
that's
enjoying the show.
He's
enjoying the show.
That we live in a world where the trust deficit is so big. So I know this is anecdotal, but every time I talk to like 50-year-olds or, they don't want to transfer from their app to another bank because it might get lost along the way. Or, so I don't know about the usage, like it's there, the platform is there for interbank transfers already. I know that the usage has gone up because of COVID, like you're looking at 80% increase, 50% or higher than that. How do we now teach those who are unbanked to finally have a bank account so that they can use all of these great platforms, because the trust deficit is just too big?
Yeah, I actually, it's very interesting that we're having this conversation, because I don't know whether Kevin introduced me, but prior to joining LinkedIn, right, I was actually at PayPal, where I spent the 5.5 years in the payment sector. So I used to remember all my meetings with BSP stakeholders, and we talked a lot about trust in the payment space. And right now at LinkedIn, I think about trust every day, right? Because LinkedIn, as I mentioned just now, is a professional platform where people come to the platform to do professional interactions. They interact with their fellow peers on a professional basis, and they are not here to talk about what they have for breakfast or where they bring their kids and so on. It's really to talk about their insights, their perspective from the professional point of view. And we want to keep the platform in a professional way. We have very strict, clear guidelines in terms of what we expect our members to do and not do on a professional platform like LinkedIn. And we want to keep all conversations on LinkedIn, right, professional. And that's the reason why we put in a lot of investments, a lot of energy, a lot of time to make sure that our members derive a very professional experience by using LinkedIn. When they first come on board, we have clear sort of user agreement that spell out what would be some of the commitments and some of the and so on. And when something happens, we also provide them with clear sort of address mechanisms, grievances sort of mechanism where they can actually, reach out and say, hey, I've encountered some issues and so on. But I would say that in general, LinkedIn is in a good position because we are really not a private or personal sort of platform. We don't see a lot of that kind of crazier stuff going on our platform. Having said that, we do take a very firm stance in terms of how we can sort of ensure that our members have a very professional experience. And I completely agree, trust is so important. I mean, trust is easily lost, right? And it's very difficult to earn. And that's something that we always think about in terms of how we can sort of continue to build and gain trust from our members.
You know, I would also say that LinkedIn's a great example, actually. People learn to the platforms that they use to get the job done, whatever their job is. It's earned also out of necessity, and so there's implied trust there. So, for example, I agree with you. I'm gonna stop what I'm doing. I'm gonna go to a bank or open up this e-wallet thing. I don't really know what it is. It's out of context. It immediately opens possibility for distrust engines. But as I started saying at the beginning, our theory is that you got to bake into the activities and experiences that truly matter, and by extension, those are embedded in these digital forms that people implicitly trust. So, for example, if you're a merchant using our Buck platform or even someone else's payment platform, but of course, I'd like focus on ours. But if you're using it, you implicitly trust it to collect your payments. We offer the merchants access to a virtual card so that in turn, the money in the wallet, even call it a wallet, but it is, they can go in turn and make purchases of their own. And once you issue them a virtual card, the option to create a deposit insured account and embedded bank is there. They're probably not even thinking that they're getting banked, but that's exactly what they're doing. And as a benefit, we're collecting transaction information upon which any of the lenders on our platform, for example, can actually lend against and provide higher value financial services. So I think that's part of it.
Just to add to that, I mean, what I've seen, okay, it's important that you use in this day and age influencers who are trustworthy. And so you would see, some of these e-wallet issuers, e-money issuers, using very trustworthy endorsers. And so it's speaking the language of the people. And so that will help build trust. I mean, if that's the issue. Really, in our surveys, that was part of the reason why they don't do banking, for example. They prefer to have money in Alcansya, as Salve said, because they know that the Alcansya will be there. But you can't bring the Alcansya to the store because you won't be able to. It will be very difficult. I think there's a question in the the chat box. Okay.
I actually want to follow through the discussion with this question from Rosa Cruz. This is very, very interesting. Very good question. Most average people do not prefer to go online banking transaction because first, it's hard to open an account, especially for those in the bottom of the society. So many IDs are being required by banks. Second, risk-related fears. Their account might be hacked. As Salve mentioned a while ago, her experience. How are these issues being addressed?
If I may just begin, okay.
Sure.
On opening an account, okay, on opening an account. The BSP, I forget what year now. I think it was much earlier on. We already started the basic deposit account. The basic deposit account is the simplest account that you could have. Oh, this was in 2018. Okay, you can open it with just 100 pesos or even less. There are simpler identification requirements, and there's no maintaining balance, and there are the dormancy charges. There are no dormancy charges. So this is one of those products that the BSP had put out. And there are now 137 financial institutions nationwide that actually offer the basic deposit account. So we can build on the BDA and so that they can be onboarded. So I just wanted to mention that. Okay.
And it's also
to start.
Some banks actually also allow it to be done purely online. So people really don't have to go to the banks
Correct.
anymore to open an account.
Yeah.
And you know that the application of this for OFWs is so very big. For kasambahays, the ones at the bottom of the pyramid who are so scared to go to bank branches. I don't know, John J. Suu Wei. I know someone who was in the province, and before she entered bank premises, she left her slippers outside because they were terrified what they will find inside. It's too clean, they tell me. So there's this distance. There's such a big emotional distance between the ordinary Filipino and banks. So what I think is also another great thing that the BSP has done is to allow different kinds of institutions to do banking transactions, like I don't know, stores. I forgot, but this is one part
We
of
call
the
them
framework,
we call them
right?
agents.
For
We call them
agents.
agent banks. Yeah.
So they're now as intimidated, but now they can do it on their phone, and I think that's even greater. It's just that I think the banking industry as a whole have to have, because the government is already driving the push, right? And there's a lot of studies that this will do well for the economy overall. But the banking industry as a whole, they have to put their money where their mouth is, so that there's real investment in financial education. And like John said, not just creation of the, not just access, but also usage. Because I know also a lot of people who open an account and forgot to fund it.
Yeah, so I completely agree with the point about that, access and usage point, right? And I think technology or digitalization is a great leveler. Whoever who actually is able to sort of figure a way to harness technology will really find a way to be able to have a good experience in terms of usage and gradually build that kind of trust. So from a LinkedIn perspective, I look after the Asia Pacific public policy and economic growth perspective, right? We'll be very happy to see how my team and I can continue to work with key public policy stakeholders in this region to build their trust, to build that experience, and to sort of narrow the gap between the users as well as the companies, and to see how we can sort of let them experience the power of technology and the power of LinkedIn and other platforms and so on, right? To see how they can sort of level up their skills, build their profiles and things like that. So we in Singapore, I just to share an example. In Singapore, we partner with the Ministry of Manpower to actually convince some employers in Singapore to come on board LinkedIn to make available some of the job openings, right? So that people can then apply for these jobs purely based on the skills that they have, instead of the education level that they have in terms of past experience, right? We try to convince the employers that it is more important to focus on skills. We call it the skills path, which is from our point of view, a way to sort of hire based on skills rather than anything else. So far, I would say the traction is really good, and employers are quite convinced that hiring based on skills seems to be the right thing to do, because you actually expand the sort of the pool of talent that you are able to sort of tap on and something like that. So this is just one example in terms of how companies like LinkedIn can actually work and partner closely with the policymakers, government agencies, and so on, to allow more individuals, right, to have access to the economic opportunities.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for those.
I was going to say,
yes, John,
I agree with all of my fellow panelists here. And I think at root, can't force somebody to do something that they're just not comfortable with. And if you do, I just don't know if that, it's definitely not satisfying for the customer. And I don't know how that could possibly be satisfying for you as a service provider as well. So I think you have to show up where the customer shows up. I think that's what it's all about. So Salve talked about, like a bank like Union Bank, where you don't have to go into a branch to open an account. And so if you're at that level of technical comfort, there you go. You open an account, there's balance required, anything like that, and the bank leverages on the rules that the deputy governor shared. Like our Bangko sa Barangay app, and again, leveraging on or complementing the regulator, leverage on agents in the field, coming to meet the customers where they are working, or where they're living to provide these banking services, and that's how you onboard them into the banking system. And then lastly, whether it's a LinkedIn or a Viber or a Lazada, that's where people, and more, that's where people are doing business, or as we all migrate to the metaverse, more and more of us are on these digital platforms, and so that's where you need to make financial services available, and they just have to be seamlessly embedded to those experiences.
I have a question for John Jay. Okay, and is it anathema to you? Because we're in the Philippines, 7,100 islands. We are lacking in the technology infra. Is UBX are you looking at non-internet based solutions? Because offline solutions to become digital,
Yep. So
this is where you can plug. Okay.
Yeah.
I love it.
Thank you. Well, thank you.
Go for it.
Wow.
No, but because this is something that we're looking forward to, really because really the reach of internet to the last mile, that needs to still be addressed. Even if we have the Executive Order 127, which expands provision of internet services to inclusive access to satellite services, that'll be a while. So maybe a more agile entity such as yourselves such as you could come up with a non-internet based.
Yep. So everything. Yeah. No. Agreed. So the technology that we deploy, for example, our eye-to-eye network, community-based financial service providers, the independent banking agents, or the agents that are connected to an AI. Our technology is on the lowest common denominator. So, for example, we can facilitate an experience over 2G, and all of our technology. So yes, it is digital. But it all works offline, online, right? So an agent in the field, you're absolutely right. There is a very good chance that they're not connected to the internet. We can facilitate an assisted digital transaction in the field. And once connectivity is achieved, then the syncing can occur. And I think in general, and there's as well with the tele infrastructure in the Philippines. And I'm not even an expert. Now I'm getting out of my leagues here, but there are definitely changes around multi-service providers when it comes to telco towers and infrastructure. Connectivity is only going to get better. But in true Filipino fashion, I think we have put enough duct tape on this to certainly reach all of the people in the country through things like offline line, 2G support, those sorts of things.
Okay, thank you. I'll give the opportunity to a fellow board, Dr. Sarah Dawai. She has a comment and apparently a not so short comment and a question. Sarah, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Kevin. And I do hope that you'll bear with me on this. But thank you to the panel for a very dynamic and engaging discussion. All right, so the comment is, I agree with the observation that more than having an account or accounts, it is the usage and frequency of use of these financial or digital accounts that matter for financial inclusion. Now, as early as the 60s or 70s, our East Asian neighbors have fostered financial inclusion through programs that tap the small and rural savers, primarily through their respective postal systems. So that, for instance, a worker can just pass by the postal office after a day's work and deposit his day's earnings or part of it with the postal office. Well, unfortunately, we were unable to develop a similar system here. Now, in this digital age, and especially during the constraints or with the constraints placed by the pandemic, I suppose that these mobile e-accounts can potentially take the place of the postal system, as a majority of adult Filipinos have mobile phones. So there's a lot of potential here. Now, earlier, I know that you mentioned, John in particular, that you've been tapping the barangays. But how about government, the BSP in particular? How can we encourage these small and rural savers to jump onto these digital platforms? And what about tapping also those with just analog mobile phones, as many in our rural areas still only have these this kind of technology? Thank you.
I'll just what the heck?
Go, John. We support
you know, you know what I'm excited about? You mentioned Phil Post.
The floor is yours.
You probably know this, but I was astonished in this. There are over 4,000 Phil Post locations in the country, over 1,250 active outlets. I believe there are over 3,500 cartels, mailmen. Imagine the reach and I believe, you know, just not to pick on Phil Post too much, but I believe it's even in their mandate that they would, for example, provide basic financial services to their community. So along the lines of the layup, the very kind layup that the deputy governor gave me earlier, these are the ecosystems in the community that we can readily tap into. And so while it can be digitally enabled, they provide last mile and that critical offline to online facilitation. So the person in the market might have an analog phone or you know, no phone at all. Maybe unlikely these days, but no phone at all. But the agent, where it's the postman, or the I don't know, the FMCG distributor, you know, they have the device that would allow for the provisioning of services. Regulation supports this today, so it's really just jumping on this opportunity and outfitting these communities and these ecosystems. And I think, you know, just to finish it, the ice on the cake is that these agents, in the broad sense of the term, are already facilitate engagements, activities, and experiences that actually matter to people that they're interacting with. Otherwise, they wouldn't be interacting.
Just to put some context in terms of numbers to the agents that we have, we call them agent banks. Okay. These are the retail outlets that we spoke about earlier, the convenience stores, pharmacies, pawn shops, and things like that. 91% of local government units already have access to agent banking services. So it really, as John Jay said, you know, we've already brought the water there. The horse just needs to go and drink of it. So, you know.
And I think that's where financial education can come in. Because unless people know it's available, unless they know that they can use it, unless they know that their money will not disappear, because again, the trust deficit, right? It's just there. You can't, there's a saying that says you can bring a horse to water, but you can't force the horse to drink the water. I don't know if that's correct.
That's what I was trying to say earlier.
Oh,
Yeah, that's right.
Very interestingly, in Phil Post, I used to be a consultant there for comms. Sometimes there's a place in Cotabato, Ganasi. It's really, really far. I am sure there is no bank in Ganasi. So the checks, the Phil Post checks, get to people because the postman rides a horse to go to Ganasi. And that's the last mile. When you're talking about the last mile in the Philippines, think about that image. Because that is the kind of situation a lot of banks and companies like UBX will have to deal with if you really want to service those who are unserved. And this is very critical. There's a question from Dr. Sorry, Kevin. Here I go again.
Go ahead.
I'm so sorry. There's a question talking about reaching the poorest of the poor in rural areas through co-ops, mutual benefit associations. A lot of them are organized, right? And they also have financial literacy content. I went to some of them because of Jaime and CIC and asked them what they do to provide financial education to those outside Metro Manila. It's just that there has to be a better access to more holistic content so that everybody's not doing their thing. And of course, there are biases, right? If you're a lending cooperative, your bias is to make sure that your members borrow from you. What if they're already overextended because they are members of different cooperatives? And now nobody can see the level of indebtedness this person has. And so I think there's still a lot of moving parts. I am happy that financial education is growing. I am happy that this space has BSP in it. Thank you, DG. I'm happy that GovBen is really into financial education a lot, but it seems like we have to do a lot more and more into uniformity in terms of the accuracy of the information that is being taught, especially for DepEd schools also, and making sure that there are no dangerous information there when it comes to investing, especially, or paying off your loans and all of those things. Now there's crypto and NFTs as well, and play to earn. So those new things have to be included in those modules and classes and lessons.
Yeah, we're running out of time, but I would like to ask a fellow board to still come in for his last question. Sir Jun, please come in.
Yeah, thank you, DG, Edna, and of course, Salve, and everyone in the panel for, again, joining us today. It's very useful. This is recorded and we will publish this for everybody's consumption. I might be diverging a bit from the topic, but I guess just like any economist, I would always have assumptions. No? Economists cannot survive without assumptions. We assume too much. No, but I wanted to share this graph. Essentially, see Secretary Chua saying it will take us 10 years to go back to our original. The topic is back to GDP. Sorry, Salve. Going back to our old GDP trajectory. No? And people talk about scarring, but I would always like to, every night I'm always reminded by Ram Emanuel's statement that we cannot let this crisis go to waste. No? And digital and human resources is one channel. And I've been asking about this since yesterday. Why can't we be like this instead? Meaning, we've had problems prior to the pandemic. Like we have to send people abroad to work and earn for us. Why can't we use this crisis as an opportunity to really maximize this acceleration? And my question, I guess, is directed to Mr. Suu Wei, which is regarding employment. No? How can we make people shift from the disrupted sectors or the disrupted industries and make them move over to technology, the new sectors that will lead the recovery of the economy in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And I'm sure part of it is financial education. If people are not financially literate enough in finance and economics, they won't appreciate the courses, the technologies that are related to jobs that will allow this to happen. So my question, I guess, is this: how can we hasten the process of moving people away from disrupted sectors into the new segments of the economy, which is the theme of our conference, transformation? No? I'm sure LinkedIn helps a lot. And yesterday, Eli Remolona mentioned the supply chains problem of the world are tapping Indonesia, Thailand, and Malaysia, but are not going to the Philippines. No? What is it about the Philippine pool of talent that shies away from technology, from being tech folks? No? Is it because we're very illiterate or very poor in terms of economic literacy? So these are just very general questions. Sorry to be interrupting the flow of the discussion. Thank you.
No, thanks very much for the question, and I know we're running out of time, so I'll keep it brief. But more than happy to see how I can follow up. Maybe to see how I can answer some of that. But completely true. COVID indeed has accelerated the adoption of digital platforms in the region. There have been quite a lot of new jobs on the rise as a result of COVID, right? Data analyst is one, web developer, cybersecurity roles as well. And in fact, the online shift throughout Southeast Asia, right, has brought about an evolution in terms of how brands and how companies communicate with their consumers digitally. And our data shows a 48% increase in companies posting on the platform in June 2020 compared to a year earlier. So even this kind of phenomenon has led to a growth in demand for digital marketers. So professionals who seek to engage consumers effectively online as well. So on that question around what we can do for Philippines, right? I think there are actually quite a lot of things that we can do. I mentioned a little bit about the importance of skill, and from this aspect, right, it is interesting to see how companies such as LinkedIn, and it's for other companies as well, to help Filipinos think about harnessing technology and be successful in the job market, right? Helping them to upskill and reskill for in-demand jobs, which a lot of these jobs in these days tend to require digital skills. And together with Microsoft, LinkedIn has actually helped nearly 6 million people in APAC to get reskilled for in-demand jobs. And globally, we have also made a commitment to help 250,000 companies to make a skills-based hire this year. So we want to see how we can open up this partnership with more stakeholders, as I mentioned just now, with the public policy stakeholders, to see how we can also allow Filipinos to harness technology and so on. And also helping members to build stronger networks, and also to think about skills, think about building their profile on LinkedIn, and embracing the opportunities and so on and so forth. I hope that helps.
Thank you, everyone. I think our time is over. We're now at 12 o'clock noon. So let me wrap up this session. Thank you to our panelists for giving their time and expertise for the success of this session. Thank you, Assistant Governor Edna Villa, Mr. Suu Wei, Mr. Januszczak, and Ms. Salve Duplito. We also thank the officials and staff of the Philippine Economic Society for making this session possible. Thank you, everyone, for joining our discussion this morning. Let me also take this opportunity to invite everyone to the rest of the plenary sessions lined up until this afternoon. The lineup of sessions may be found in the website and official Facebook page of PES. Of course, we also thank our session participants, especially those who asked questions, for joining this timely and relevant discussion. We request everyone to accomplish our brief evaluation form to help us further improve on similar activities. The link to the evaluation form is flashed on your screens and is posted in the chat box in the comments section. Only those who are able to submit the evaluation form will be given e-certificates of attendance for this session. Coming up next is a plenary session on Ambisyon Natin 2040 in the New Normal, organized and sponsored by the National Economic and Development Authority. That session will begin at 1 p.m. Again, thank you very much, and see you all in the next session.